Hey, what's up, guys? So this is one of my favorite email templates that I ever used, and it's called the appropriate person formula. This is, again, it's one of the most effective that I've used in my entire career. In fact, I've used it for small, medium, and enterprise companies in all types of industries, selling all types of different products. And for the most part, it pretty much works most of the time. Now, this is an interesting one because it does break some of the rules that I've shared with you earlier in this course. But if you just follow along and you follow it step by step, I know it's going to work for you as well. Here's how the appropriate person formula is going to work. What you're gonna do is you're gonna want to email 4 different decision makers at a company in the same department all at the same time. Let's say you're emailing a company, you're gonna want to email one chief executive officer or CMO or CFO, someone in the C-level suite. Then you want to email a person below that person, so maybe the VP of marketing, VP of sales, VP of finance. Then you want to email one director, like director of marketing, director of sales, and you want to have one wild card. For example, if you're emailing all marketing people, you want to have one CIO in that mix. And the reason why you want to do this is because you're basically emailing, let's say, the director, and you're emailing the director's boss, which is the VP, and you're emailing the VP's boss, which is the chief XO. And basically what you're doing is you're emailing your boss, your boss's boss, and one wild card. And I'm going to show you exactly why you're doing this. Part of the reason you're doing it is because executives love to delegate. So if you're emailing the CEO and you're emailing all these other people, basically the CEO is going to delegate the responsibility of taking the meeting with you to a lower level, like a VP level or a director level, which is what you want. In a way, you're kind of creating an internal referral, and you're basically saying, hey, I got some value to offer, and then someone at the high level who finds it interesting will push your offer onto the next person who will have to do the work and take a meeting with you. And so if you think about it, if let's say a director of marketing is told by the CEO to take a meeting with you, they're basically going to do it and they're not going to say no. And so you're basically creating that type of social pressure internally within their company. So go back to this blueprint that I showed you guys way in the beginning of the course. Here's how most organizations work. There's a C-suite, vice presidents, directors. So we're basically going to focus on the top 3, and we're not going to focus at all on the managers or individual contributors because they're not going to have the decision-making power to actually make a purchasing decisions. So this is called the chaining technique. So for example, if you are emailing the marketing department of a company, you're going to send one email to the chief marketing officer, one to the vice president of marketing, one to the director of marketing, and your wild card may be the vice president of innovation. So you're sending 4 emails to 4 different people in the same department, one wild card in the same company. And so why you want to do this is because companies are basically always looking for opportunities to improve their business. And basically, if you're offering real value and you're emailing these people, they're going to send someone to you to take a meeting. So going back to this graph, if you're offering value to everybody, basically if the C-suite, if the chief marketing officer thinks that you offer value and the vice president also agrees that you offer value, they're going to have a little discussion internally, and they're basically going to say, this seems interesting, but we don't want to spend time on it. So let's push it to the director of marketing and let's have him take the meeting. And so basically that's how the chaining technique works. It's getting people at the higher levels to create some sort of social pressure and push it down onto the lower level people, which would be a director. Here's how it's going to go down. When you're sending the 4 individual emails to each prospect, you do not want to CC anybody or BCC anyone at all. So you're sending an individual email to each of these 4 different people without connecting the emails at all. And in that email, it's broken down into 4 different steps. Step 1 is the subject line. Step 2 is your introduction. Step 3 is going to be your pitch. And step 4 is your call to action. And again, the more closely you follow this template that I'm about to send you, the more likely you're going to get a better chance of success. So let's go ahead and dive into the subject line. So in the subject line, you're going to write appropriate person, capital A, lowercase p. And you do not want to be creative with this one. You just want to send appropriate person. I've tried many different variations of changing the subject line for this email format, and I found that appropriate person works the best out of anything I have ever tried. So send an email to 4 different people. Don't CC anyone. Subject line being appropriate person for all of the people you're sending it to. Now, this is going to be the introduction. So you say, hey, prospect, I'm writing in hopes of finding the appropriate person who handles department. In that pursuit, I also wrote to prospect A, prospect B, and prospect C. So if it makes sense to talk, let me know how your calendar looks. And so what you're doing in the intro is basically you're saying you're writing the company in hopes to find the appropriate person who handles a department, for example, marketing. So you're not saying, you're not necessarily asking for a meeting directly. You're just saying, hey, I'm a little lost and I need a little help finding the right person to talk to. The next sentence, you're saying, in that pursuit, I also wrote to your boss, your boss's boss, and this random person. So you're indicating that you wrote to all of these three other people. You're not CCing any of them. You're just letting them know that you wrote to all these different people. And then at the last sentence in this paragraph is you're saying, so if it makes sense to talk, let me know what your calendar looks like. Again, you're basically giving them right away what you want. You're saying you want a meeting to see if it makes sense to work with each other. And so all encapsulated in this introduction, you're writing exactly why you want a meeting with them, who you wrote an email to besides them, and what you want the outcome of the end of the email to be, which is to get a meeting. So that's going to be the introduction. Let's move into the body. So the pitch. Your pitch is where you're going to differentiate yourself from everybody else, and it's where you're going to offer your value. And you want to talk about how you can help them at a high level. Don't include any technical details on how-tos of how you're going to actually do it. You just want to give them an idea of how it's going to work and just enough information for them to be curious enough to take a meeting with you. And now the pitch itself is going to be 4 to 8 sentences. And I know that 8 sentences can be a little bit on the longer side, but if you do it right, it's going to work even though it's a long form email. And again, you only want to give enough information to inspire them to want to take a meeting with you. Do not give too much and do not give enough for them to say no. And lastly, you want to include at least 3 clients that you worked with for social proof in that pitch. And trust me, putting in clients or their competitors does help a lot and get them to emotionally want to take a meeting with you. Now, some questions you want to think about as you craft your pitch is, what can you do for them? How does what you have work? What pain do you solve for that person you want to meet? Again, people buy based on pain. What pain do you solve for them? So it's a little bit like the pain doctor formula I showed you earlier. And what are the problems you have helped other clients solve? Let's go ahead and dive into an example of what a pitch looks like. Again, this is a little bit on the longer side, but trust me, when you're explaining to them high level how it works, it does really pay off. I'm going to go ahead and read this with you so you get an idea of how it's going to go down. And for this example, I just made up a company, Influencer.io, that helps people in the social media marketing space as an example for you. So let's get started. Influencer.io helps global apparel brands increase revenues and reach new audiences by helping them research and contact social media influencers to promote their brand. So right off the bat, I'm basically saying, hey, we help people increase revenue. So it basically, why wouldn't you want to take a meeting with someone that can help you make more money, right? As you know, finding the perfect influencer to represent your brand can take hours of manual research. In that sentence, I'm throwing in the pain. To solve this, our platform helps hundreds of brands quickly search through our global database of influencers and build outreach campaigns. And because our data is updated 20 times per day with influencers' latest data such as contact info, audience demographic, and engagement, marketing teams can make better strategic decisions based on the most accurate data available on the market. So again, I threw in the pain, then I came in as a doctor to solve their pain, and I'm showing them how I can save them a lot of time. And then the next paragraph of the pitch is, typically our clients free up to 23 hours per week on time spent on research, which can now be refocused on developing stronger marketing strategies. Some of our clients include Adidas, H&M, and Calvin Klein. So in that last paragraph, I'm basically saying I can save you guys a ton of time that is usually done on manual labor, and now that time can be focused on developing better strategy because we're using technology to automate the manual side of things. And the last sentence, I'm saying our clients include Adidas, H&M, and Calvin Klein because I want to have social proof, and I want to say like, hey, not only do we offer value, but we have successful companies under our client belt, and if they're working with us, you should be working with us too. Again, it could be 4 to 8 sentences, and again, it is a little bit on the longer side, but I'm clearly demonstrating exactly what we do and how we can help people. And trust me, if you do this long form correctly, it does work. Now, the call to action at the very end. If you are the appropriate person to speak with, what does your calendar look like? But if not, who do you recommend I talk to, Patrick? And then you put in your email signature. Again, you emailed 4 different people. So at the end, you're basically just saying, hey, if you're the appropriate person to speak with, what does your calendar look like? So if they're the right person, they might respond immediately with an email saying that they want to take a meeting. Or if not, who do you recommend I talk to? And this is where the chaining strategy comes into play, because if you email the CEO, they might recommend you to the director of marketing, and they'll forward that email and let you know to talk to that person. When we're looking at the entire email from a high level, this is pretty much what it's going to look like on somebody's computer or their phone. It's going to be broken up into about 5 different paragraphs, with each one being a sentence or 2, except the pitch of the email. And again, in the beginning, just remember that you're also writing all the different people that you're writing to. So it says, in that pursuit, I also wrote to prospect A, B, and C. Make sure that you actually put their first and last names over there. Okay, so what's going to happen next is one of the 4 people will respond to your email and tell you a time that they are available for a meeting. And so basically, once you get that, basically your meeting is scheduled. The other thing that might happen is one of the 4 people may forward your email to the actual appropriate person who you should be talking to, and that person may respond to that email scheduling a meeting with you. And again, since you're emailing 4 people at a time, multiple people might email you back, but most likely one of them in the lower level person will take a meeting with you. And so basically what you're doing is you're emailing all these people and you're getting them to have an internal discussion and decide whether or not they should take a meeting with you. And then when they make the decision and it's a yes, they're going to get one person to email you back and say, hey, let's do a meeting. And so that's pretty much what's going to happen. Another thing that might happen is if, let's say, the 4 people that you emailed all of them are not the right person, what may happen is the prospect may email you back letting you know who the appropriate person is by giving you their name and email address. So a response might be, hi Patrick, thanks for reaching out. Sally Tran is the right person to talk to. And so when that happens, usually they CC Sally Tran on the email, but if they don't, you can just use our methods to find that person's email. And what you're going to do is you're going to thank the person who referred you and tell them after your meeting you will report back to them and let them know how the meeting went. And you forward that email to Sally Tran and you say, hey Sally, John thought it might make sense to talk about, and then you put in the unique value benefit. If that's the case, let me know what your calendar looks like. But if not, who do you recommend I talk to? So you're saying this thing again. And because John recommended that you talk to Sally, you forward the email to Sally and basically you say this, and Sally might say, oh, interesting, I'll take a meeting with you. And then they'll give you a time when that meeting will take place. So the short version of the appropriate email is basically the same thing. If you don't want to put the individual names in the introduction of the email, you don't necessarily have to. This strategy works if you're sending hundreds of different emails at a time and you don't have time to customize each one. So in the beginning, you could see I took off one of the sentences where it said, in that pursuit, I also wrote to. It's not there. You can also shorten the body pitch if you want to. For the most part, that's going to be it. Really, it's just shortening the pitch and taking out the people's names in the introduction. And you could also send a lot of these emails to different industries and different companies, and it's also still going to work for you. So to recap, that's a short version and long version of the appropriate person email formula. This is definitely a more complex strategy compared to the others, so you might want to rewatch this lesson again. But the main thing is you're basically picking a company, emailing 4 people, 4 decision makers at the same time, not CCing anybody, and you're basically asking who the appropriate person is to talk to, giving your unique benefit, and then at the end doing the call to action and getting them to refer you to somebody or get a meeting on the spot. And so that's the appropriate person strategy. It's going to work for all different industries, all different products. So if you really master this email template, I really know that it's going to work for you. So that's everything we got to cover for the appropriate person, and let's move on to the next one.